Okay, go.
Cool. All right, welcome everybody. Welcome one, welcome all to you sovereign individuals. It's the first community call of 2024, episode 60. We've come a long way delivering the best Bitcoin DeFi ecosystem. And as you may know, we are evolving. We're out to scale Bitcoin and make it faster, more versatile, and smarter, and creating the best programmable environment for building a world on Bitcoin. So we're going to be speaking on everything from our financial reporting to SOV staking rewards, as well as the roadmap for the anticipated BitcoinOS launch. So I would love to welcome to the stage Idan Yago.
Hey guys, I thought we were going to cover the finances first.
Okay, do we have Armando here for the financial report?
Yeah, if you could skip to those slides quickly, I can cover it pretty fast.
All right, let me try and find it. Okay, here we go.
Okay, thanks Ingemar, and thanks everyone for joining. I thought it would be good to provide a financial update in this call, despite the fact that it's not a full financial report for 2023. So I'll start off by saying that over the course of the next couple of weeks, in early February, Exchequer will be releasing the full financial report for 2023, which will also include treasury balances, a proposal for a budget for 2024, and an SOV report covering all of the distributions that have been made by Exchequer from inception to date. I wanted to give a short update about a couple of things on this call to give everyone context about what's happening, and it's also relevant to what will be covered on the rest of the community call, because the goal of the budget that we'll be proposing is to support the roadmap and the launch of BitcoinOS in 2024. So to briefly cover our treasury goals, like I mentioned, we want to tailor a budget that can support the development of BitcoinOS, as well as continued maintenance of all current SOV services that are running. In terms of SOV, we will be raising a step for the transfer of SOV that has become liquid from the Adoption and Development Fund. And this is primarily for ongoing expenses and provision of liquidity to market makers. Our intention is to deepen the liquidity, make the trading experience even better, reduce spreads, and set the SOV up over the next few months for the launch on additional exchanges and additional venues. In addition, part of the transferred SOV to Exchequer will be used for SOV rewards, which will also be covered in this call today. So what I will be covering today is a quick overview of SOV distributions to date, and I think that'll give some context to the full financial report that we'll be releasing soon. So if you could move forward one slide, please. Before we touch on SOV, we just wanted to give you some information about the project's operating expenses versus budget. We think this is important because we will be putting forward a SIP for a budget that has increased spending this year than traditionally, or what we saw in 2023. And as part of that, we just wanted to cover the fact that over the course of the last 18 months, the project has been, like every other project in space, going through the conditions of a bear market, where there was a steep decline in Bitcoin's price, and after that, together with that, a decline in the price of all of the assets in the space. And our main goal during that time was to make sure, that the project survives the bear market, is able to maintain its organizational knowledge, its set of contributors, and to have enough resources to cover technical debt that was left in prior years, and prepare the project for probably its most pivotal year, 2024, and we'll get into why it is so pivotal. So the main goal was to have budgetary discipline, which I believe we accomplished. And on average, during 2023, all expenses came under budget, an average of 2%. And that set us up for to be in a healthy financial position now, as we get started with what appears to be the next bull run for Bitcoin. More information about the expenses as well as future budget, like I mentioned, will be in the full report. Could you skip one slide forward, please, anyone?
Also, please, if you are not muted, mute yourselves, and my request to the community managers, please mute people who aren't muting themselves. All right, thanks. So,
like I mentioned, one of the SIPs that will be put forward is a SIP requesting approval to transfer liquid SOV, or SOV that has been released from its programmatic vesting schedules in the Adoption and Development Fund, as we have done twice before in 2023 and before that in 2022. When the SIP comes up, we will also be publishing a full report of all of the SOV that was distributed since TGE. But I think one of the important things to highlight here is that in addition to exercising financial discipline over the last year, Exchequer has also conscientiously been quite strict with its distribution of SOV. And what you can see here is highlighted in orange is the total amount of SOV for every year that was distributed by Exchequer. That includes both programmatic distributions and non-programmatic distributions, and I'll get into a little bit more detail of what those are. But below that, you can also see that the percent utilization of SOV available to Exchequer based on the emission schedule is on average about 40%. So what does that mean? That means that during the period of 2022 to 2023, out of the total pool of SOV available to Exchequer for distribution, on average, only about 40% of that was utilized. And obviously that was done because during bear market conditions, it is difficult to grow. It is more challenging to utilize SOV as a reward for incentivizing additional growth and additional and onboarding additional users. And additionally, since the token price was low during this time, there's less bang for our buck in distributing SOV. All of this is a preface to say that to give you some information about. We do intend on. I'm getting some background noise.
Yeah, I think there's a non-zero chance that we are currently in the process of the Satoshi VM crowd trying to DDoS us. So I just need the community managers to please be on it with muting anyone who comes on unmuted. Don't even wait for them to start making noise.
Thanks, Iago. So all that to say that this dynamic is going to flip this year, and we intend to utilize SOV to incentivize growth, which is really what the bull market is around. The bull market is around distributing SOV to stakers, inducing growth, incentivizing additional users to come on board. And so all of that will be part of the SOV slip that will be released for community debate next week on the forum, and then probably go to vote 1 or 2 weeks after that. And so I think we can expect to see additional SOV spent on things like bug bounties, development bounties, adoption bounties, and primarily staking rewards. So this slide just gives a breakdown of what non-programmatic distributions are versus programmatic distributions. Non-programmatic distributions are distributions made by Exchequer for contributor compensation, for bug bounties, which we increased drastically in 2023. We had found that it's probably the most efficient and effective way for us to ensure the security of the system. The bug bounty program has proven to be really invaluable and much more, from what we've seen, much more beneficial than regular audits. So that's something that we're going to put an emphasis on. Beyond that, we've also seen seen that the majority of SOV that has been distributed, 48%, has actually gone to liquidity mining, and we expect that over the next few months, a lot of that will be diverted to staking to increase the set of SOV holders and increase the decentralization and robustness of our governance of Bitocracy as we transition from the set of DApps that Sovereign currently is on Rootstock to Sovereign being its own infrastructure provider through BitcoinOS. So that was just to give everyone a small snapshot of what to expect over the next couple of weeks. So just to recap quickly, 2 steps coming up. One is a proposal for an increased budget to support all of the activity over 2024. The other will be a step for the transfer of SOV to Exchequer, and that will also detail what we expect those distributions to look like. And all of that will be on the back of the full financial report that will be published at the beginning of February. That's all for me, Inglandia.
All right.
Thank you very much, and I'll be available for questions at the end of the call.
Great. Yes. Everyone, please save your questions towards the end. I think this will be a pretty chunky one, so let's just make sure we get all the updates finished first. And so we'll move on to
real quick.
Daniago.
Hi, my name is French Victory. I'm the adoption lead here in Sovereign. You guys may have noticed that we have an announcement tweet live now on our Twitter account, on Sovereign's Twitter account. And it would be awesome if everyone present could take 10 seconds, go to Sovereign's Twitter and retweet this tweet. It makes wonders to exposure, makes wonders to the project. There are a lot of eyes on us right now. I see a lot of new faces, so I guess you know that. And these retweets, these new lead to new exposures to new people, which are key in getting us a new audience. So if everyone can take 10 seconds and do that right now, it'll be highly, highly appreciated. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much, French Victory.
Yeah, and bookmark. That's a hack someone taught me. You bookmark a tweet that you really care about, and the algo will figure it. It's an important tweet.
There you go. Some Twitter algo alpha. All right. So moving on. Let's do the strategic update. Iago.
Thank you. So what have we been up to? Next slide. You'll see that the answer is nothing. Quite a lot, actually. Awesome. All right. So a little bit of a delay there in getting the slide. We're actually working on a huge amount of stuff in parallel at the moment. Over the coming 3 months, we expect to do our first multi-chain deployment, our first non-rootstock deployment, probably the first of many. There are a number of different platforms that we're in talks to. There's huge amount of interest from some of them to bring Sovereign because it's such a unique project. And so we're actually possibly being offered bribes, and we'll invite those teams, or at least one of them, over the course of the next few weeks, we hope, to come speak at one of our meetings, talk to the community, and give you guys the opportunity to decide whether or not you think we should be deploying to their chain. We're also working on a major DEX upgrade. The full contours of this DEX upgrade are not clear, but we expect to have a much more efficient DEX with deeper opportunities for liquidity, better and possibly dynamic fees, and we're looking also, cross fingers, to be able to bring back the limit orders, but this time in a much more performant way. We're also working to adjust the origination fees. Now, when I say we, I'm talking about the Sovereign community as a whole. For example, the conversation around origination fees, there's a bunch of people who are being extremely active, who I'd like to actually call out. So, Capitalist 42, Sacro, One Digit, David Soroy, Hyde, wonder if I'm forgetting anyone. Let me see. Anyway, CK, obviously. So, my understanding is that they are constantly monitoring the origination fees and are looking to potentially introduce a SIP to reduce them further. We have been working for a while now on the ability to integrate Taproot Assets into Sovereign and to bridge Taproot Assets. I'll talk a little bit more about Taproot Assets further on, but I think that's very exciting. Today, we announced BitcoinOS, the Bitcoin Rollup Super Layer. I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. And we're working on a bunch of importantly fun and silly stuff because we are in a bull market, we think, we hope, and we hope to encourage it. And nothing does that like fun, silly stuff. All right, let's move forward. So, in the black paper, we set out a structure for how we were going to achieve our ultimate mission of building a world on Bitcoin and providing a path to hyper-Bitcoinization. Much too big a task for us to do in one chunk, much too big a task for us to do at the time when we were just a small project. So we said first we would build a suite of dApps. And I think we've convincingly done that. We have consistently for 3 years been the largest, from TVL, from trade volume, from lending volume, the biggest ecosystem of Bitcoin DeFi in the world. Bigger than all of the rest of them combined. For a small project, I think that's extremely impressive. But we've always been operating in a niche market. Now the market is becoming much more competitive. There are vastly more people interested in Bitcoin Layer 2s. There's vastly more people interested in Bitcoin DeFi, and there are vastly more projects. And we need to continue to lead in this space. That brings us to the second part of our roadmap, which is being about building permissionless infrastructure, trustless smart contract rollups on Bitcoin. Now, at the last community meeting, we went into quite a bit of depth on what it is that we're planning to build and the high-level architecture. We also discussed how we're looking to bring in and are working collaboratively with teams from across the Bitcoin ecosystem on this project. But some of you were not on that call, and that call, because it was the first secret call that we had as a community, was not recorded. I'm going to give a quick summary of what we discussed there. And I'm going to talk about the permissionless infrastructure for Bitcoin that we're building. Next slide, please. So BitcoinOS is designed to take Bitcoin from being just a platform for digital gold into an operating system for the world, building a shared compute system upon which we can build anything. Next slide, please. And the key to doing this is we have to be able to solve 3 problems. The first, for us to be able to say we're really bringing smart contracts to Bitcoin, and not just to a chain which is merge mined with Bitcoin or is a side chain of Bitcoin, but actual Bitcoin. We need those transactions to be Bitcoin transactions, and we need them to have 100% of Bitcoin security. And we also need them, and this is where the magic comes in, we need them to happen off-chain. They can't happen on main chain. So that is what a rollup is supposed to do. But it's not just enough to secure the transactions that are happening on that chain. We also need to have near trustless ability to move Bitcoin between the different layers, between the different rollups, and between those rollups and Bitcoin main chain. This is an even more difficult problem. A lot of people are working on the problem of Bitcoin security. Far fewer people even have a path to working on near trustless Bitcoin rails. And the final thing, which is also unique to us, is our focus on interoperability and scalability. There will be many Bitcoin rollups, and it will be a shame if they are not interoperable, if each one is a fragmented silo with cannot share transactions, cannot share users, cannot share liquidity with the others. And so if we can solve all 3 of those problems, we don't just have Bitcoin and rollups, we expand Bitcoin itself to include the rollups. Next slide, please. So, broadly speaking, what does our architecture look like? What are we trying to build? Where are we headed? So we've got on the extreme right, we've got Bitcoin blocks in Bitcoin main chain, part of Bitcoin core, right? We'll call it the core. On the other side, we've got transactions that are happening off-chain. And because they're happening off-chain, they can have extremely low cost. They can be performed with extremely fast settlement, potentially sub-second settlement, and they can be written into different virtual machines, EVM or Rust or Solana or Clarity or whatever programmers want to build with. The magic is what happens in the middle. These off-chain transactions need to be aggregated, bundled up, or rolled up together, and they need to be compressed. It is this act of compression which is the rolling up process. And so any rollup will do that. It will take a bunch of transactions and compress them. What we're looking to do, which is different, is, as you can see, in our compute layer, there are 3, or potentially any number, but we're showing here 3 rollups. And these rollups, instead of aggregating and compressing the transactions into a validity proof that goes straight into Bitcoin Core, they go through an execution layer, and this execution layer is a shared layer, which means that all of those transactions get bundled together into one proof. That enhances scalability, reduces costs, and the most important thing, it means that someone who is on rollup number 1, which is a privacy-focused rollup, can be transacting with a dApp that is on rollup number 4, which is a DeFi-focused rollup. They get the benefits of the privacy, they get the benefits of the DeFi, and it feels to them like they're working on one single chain, because it's all going through the same execution layer. That is our goal. This is what we're trying to build. Next slide, please. Okay, so that show takes care of, I know I'm making it sound simple. It's not simple, but if we get there, and when we get there, that takes care of Bitcoin security. It takes care of interoperability and scalability. What about near trustless Bitcoin rails? Next slide, please. All right, so this is where Holy Rail comes in. Holy Rail is a project that we're collaborating with that I am deeply involved in, and its goal is to build cryptographically secure BTC rails that will be used by Sovereign. The way Holy Rail works is instead of using a federation or, some kind of trusted peg, it creates cryptographically secure BTC bridging, which works between main chain and the rollup and between the rollups. This system is similar to and inspired in part by some astounding technology that was proposed by Robin Linus called BitVM. But it has significant optimizations, and we're rushing to bring it to a place where we'll be able to integrate it into what Sovereign is building over the coming months. Next slide, please. So how can we do this? How can we go from trusted to near trustless, from an honest majority assumption where you have to trust that a majority of participants in a multisig are going to keep your Bitcoin safe, to a situation where a single participant, a single honest participant, and that participant could potentially be you, can maintain the integrity of the entire system. Well, the way we're able to do this is by taking advantage of something we call reality. Next slide, please. Because the nice thing about reality, the nice thing about truth, and especially mathematical truth, is that it's asymmetric. If you can show a mathematical proof of something, then it doesn't matter how many people are arguing against you. There's no vote. There's just a clear mathematical proof. And that's basically what cryptography is. And so this idea of being able to create validity proofs that prove that something has happened and that as a result something should happen has been the big struggle. We don't have the opcodes in Bitcoin to use these. If we did, we would have true trustlessness. But what's great about the optimistic VM paradigm, which was introduced by Bitcoin VM, is it allows us to have what we call optimistic scenario, where under most cases the system just works. But if someone does try to cheat, then we just need one honest participant to come, bring a proof, and they can stop the fraud and, in fact, punish the attacker. So that is how we expect to bring all three parts: 100% Bitcoin security, near trustless rails, and interoperability and composability to Bitcoin space. Next slide, please. And so what that means is that as a project, we are now building upon the suite of apps in the community that we've built, and we are moving from being only a project focused on dApps to a project that is also building Bitcoin infrastructure that our dApps will be able to use, that we as a community will be able to use, but they will be open to everyone, to any developer who wants to build their own rollup or any developer who wants to build applications on Bitcoin. That's what BitcoinOS's mission is. Next slide, please. Okay, now before I also mentioned Taproot Assets because rollups are exciting. But they're not the only thing happening in Bitcoin. Bitcoin is undergoing an absolute renaissance right now. And one of the things that kicked off this renaissance was the idea of ordinals, the idea of introducing through inscriptions NFTs into Bitcoin. Later, people sort of hacked this technology to create BRC20s. It's not a great technology for that. It's a hack of a hack. But it brought fungible tokens directly to Bitcoin main chain. There's a new protocol, which is in its early phases, called Taproot Assets. Used to be called Taro, and has gotten a lot of attention, but hasn't really taken off yet. The way Taproot Assets works is vastly more complicated in some ways, but much more powerful and much simpler on the actual Bitcoin blockchain than BRC20. It's a far more elegant solution than BRC20s. And we have mostly ignored BRC20s because they're a hack of a hack. But we expect to play an important role in helping to popularize Taproot Assets, which can be used on Lightning Network as well, and other protocols that we expect to be introduced. to Bitcoin main chain for tokens, including runes and ZK coins. So we've been working on a bridge. This will allow us to take sovereign dollars and turn them into the first Bitcoin stablecoin, the first stablecoin that can be transacted easily on Lightning Network. It will allow us to take SOV and introduce it to Bitcoin main chain. And it will allow us to offer projects that are creating Taproot assets a place to trade by bringing them to sovereign DEX. And I think that's going to open up and expose us, if this market takes off the way we think it could, to a number of assets where we will have a unique and distinct advantage in a way that's never been true about sovereign DEX before. Next slide, please. All right, so what does the roadmap here look like? This is going to be an important year. This is, what I'm talking about here, this is 2024. And so let's look at the way we expect this evolution of sovereign to occur over the course of the coming year. So Q1 is about preparing the groundwork. In a separate video, and I've already published some thoughts to the forum, and I'm planning to publish a video and have a separate call just around this. I think it's going to be important for us to introduce staking rewards, which go beyond BTC, SOV staking rewards to SOV stakers. I don't want to get into why now. It's a big topic. We were originally going to talk about it today, but we've removed it. We've also spoken about the Taproot Assets bridge, and we have started a process of, today we announced BitcoinOS. We're going to be releasing the Holy Grail white paper. We've got another BitcoinOS orange paper in the works. We've got a validity proof roll-up paper that we're working in partnership in the works, and we're expecting to be able to announce partners who are working on BitcoinOS with us all this quarter. Next quarter, Q2, we expect to introduce Sovereign for the first time to a non-rootstock chain. We expect to have a DevNet of BitcoinOS, and we potentially, and I can't stress enough that this is just potential. We don't know if this is going to be possible yet. But we might be able to have Sovereign Layer, a standalone rollup on Bitcoin, already in mainnet as soon as next quarter. Now, I'd like to caveat this. The way we are thinking of BitcoinOS and where we want to get to with BitcoinOS, it would be a pure play Bitcoin system. You would require no other system. If we want to get into market by Q2, we would have to introduce a hybrid model, which would require an additional component called a data availability layer. We wouldn't be able to simply rely on Bitcoin to provide the data availability layer. The technology isn't quite there yet. It's close. We would then be able to transition. So there's going to be a discussion around this, but I wanted to let you guys know this is something we're working towards. We don't know if it's possible, but we're definitely exploring. Q3, we expect to have Holy Grail, at least on testnet. We're targeting mainnet. Testnet for BitcoinOS, BitcoinOS mainnet in Q4, and then the introduction of an ecosystem fund to help other projects start building their own rollups or projects on Sovereign Layer. Next slide, please. No, this was supposed to be removed because it's too much to get into today. Can we skip the staking reward slides? All right.
Sure.
Yeah, no, you're apparently it was just yeah, that's right.
Okay, cool.
All right, one last thing. With the introduction of Taproot Assets, we also wanted to kickstart and help popularize Taproot Assets. And so we're also planning to create a Taproot Asset token. And right now it's a mystery token. But to create the Taproot Asset token, which will be airdropped to SOV stakers, to SOV OGs, people who have been using the protocol for a long time, and to people who are using it now. So over the next 2 or 3 weeks, it might be a really exciting time to become a first-time user of Sovereign, because there's some, this is the kind of fun, silly stuff that can really make a difference. And we'll be talking more about this very soon as well. I think that was my last slide. What's the next slide? Oh, yes, the most important thing. it's very hard to put timelines on anything that is R&D. We feel confident that we can deliver this roadmap in 2024. We can't say exactly, and that's why we talk in quarters. We can give broad sort of milestones that we're trying to hit. But we are working full speed. And so this is the vision that we have. This is going to be a career that we're in phase 2, and we're looking to deliver, to ship in 2024. Yago signing off. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Yago. Excellent stuff. Now let's bring up French Victory with the adoption update.
Thanks, Yago, and thanks, Ingemar and Galandia. Next slide, please. We have another new initiative, which is turning out to be very, very successful. It's called the SOV Squad. It's a Telegram group. And this group is meant to amplify our social messages, mostly by retweeting and especially by quote tweeting. We have found that these are the methods that work the most for exposure, for views on Twitter. Now, since this group launched, I think just last week, we have 10x'd our reach on Twitter. Our posts make 50,000 views, which is, we don't even have 50,000 followers right now. And this group is making a very, very big change. And we would like you, people who use Twitter, to join us in the Sovereign Squad. So next slide please. You can search for SOV Squad on Telegram. You can scan this QR code. You can just type this link in any type of browser that you may use, and join the SOV Squad, the SOV Squad. Help us get the message across. Help us raise awareness to the project, to the assets, and everything else that we do around here. This is truly a successful venture, an exciting venture, which is part of a very exciting step up for the project as a whole. Thank you very much.
Also, just to reiterate, that would be the group where we post any insider sovereign info first. So if you want the inside scoop, please join that group. Thank you very much. All right, so we just had the financial update with Elon, and I believe we can take questions now. I'll keep it on this slide. So the floor is open. If anyone has questions on the financial update, on the Sovereign Squad, or our roadmap, feel free to unmute yourself and just ask away.
Yeah, hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes. What's your name?
My name is Mora. I'm in the SOV Squad now. I brought it up a couple times, but I mean, I see consistently the ESOV is leading price action, and I'm just wondering if there's any plans on introducing liquidity rewards for that side.
So right now there are no plans to introduce liquidity rewards. Liquidity rewards are expensive. We have learned over the last few years that we need to be very careful in shepherding SOV. We don't want to flood the market with SOV unnecessarily. There are probably cheaper alternatives. We are looking into the possibility of working with a market maker to have a deeper liquidity provided via Uniswap v3. And that is maybe partially an interim solution, because we might be able to also offer sort of sovereign trading within the wider Ethereum ecosystem over the coming months. Yes, we're aware of the need to provide additional liquidity. We just need to find a capital efficient way of doing it.
Yeah, totally agree. I was
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
I also have a question for Yago. I know right before this call, there was a Spaces involving Satoshi VM, and some of my friends are saying that you kind of came in and exposed Satoshi VM for what it is, kind of called them out on some things, and it ended up blowing up all over Twitter and getting us a lot of attention. Do you want to kind of narrate the play-by-play?
Look, I was invited to that call. I didn't know a lot about Satoshi VM before, or almost nothing. I just knew that they'd, done some kind of ICO. But while other people on the call were talking, I was looking through their website, their GitHub, their white paper, and it didn't make sense. It seemed like they were saying a lot of contradictory stuff. It felt like everything had just sort of been copy-pasted from other pieces and sewn together. So I was trying to figure out how to get to the bottom of this, because technical things are very, very difficult to discuss. On a Spaces with Mario, they're basically impossible to discuss, and certainly to get to any resolution. But then it suddenly occurred to me that there actually might be a really simple way that I can ask a question. I asked them, of the three kinds of rollup that exist, a ZK rollup, a validity or sovereign rollup, and finally an optimistic rollup, which kind were they? And they said that they were a ZK rollup. And we discussed, I asked them a few more questions about that, but that was basically all I needed to know, because there's only three kinds of rollup, but only two of them are possible of Bitcoin. And ironically, they chose to say that they were the one kind that actually can't be built on Bitcoin. So not only did they expose that they were not building something real, they also exposed that they don't even have enough basic information or understanding of the space to understand that they had chosen the one thing to say, which was definitely impossible. It's very rare to be able to sort of catch people in a lie in that way, where it's black and white. I'm glad that we were able to do it. They still claim that they're doing it, and they said that they will, open source their documents. I hope that's true, because if they've managed to solve how to do ZK rollups on Bitcoin, they deserve a Nobel Prize. But I suspect they won't be getting a Nobel Prize.
Iago, I just want to make one point of clarification. I think you keep conflating sovereign rollup and validity rollup, and these are two separate things. Maybe you know that, but the vernacular is a little bit off. Like a validity rollup is kind of the proper term for a ZK rollup. Like a ZK rollup, has to do with privacy. A validity proof is the actually proving of the validity. Like what people call ZK rollups are actually validity rollups. They're not sovereign rollups. And I just want to make sure that we don't fall into the same trap of something like Satoshi VM where we're kind of misrepresenting these terms.
Fair enough. I don't think so. I think that, for example, sovereign rollups or validity rollups as well. I think ZK rollups can only be one thing, and they can't exist in Bitcoin. But I think that's a good point, and thanks for raising it.
All right. Do we have any more questions from our fellow sovereigns?
We have a question from the YouTube chat. Guillaume Lebs asks, except for Sovereign, any other Bitcoin L2 projects you guys like now?
The Alpen Labs team seemed to be a very serious team. I think the Chainway team seemed to be... it's hard to assess them still, but they seem to be smart guys who are seriously engaging with the technology. High level, and what I'm going to say is a pretty dramatic thing. I think that basically everything that isn't a rollup is going to be obsoleted by Bitcoin rollups. So, Stacks, for example, are doing an amazing job of popularizing the idea of Bitcoin Layer 2s, but I think their base technology is about to be made obsolete. So I think they're an awesome team, but I think they're going to have to evolve their entire system.
Capitalist 42 says, will we have a technical preview for developers who want to build a DApp in Q2, assuming on BitcoinOS?
Currently, all signs are pointing to yes. I can't say for certain, but I think we yes. So if you look at the roadmap, we are expecting a DevNet in Q2.
Darkhan asks, if I understand correctly, with the launch of BitcoinOS, Rootstock will be completely left and the smart contracts on it will longer be usable, right?
No, that's incorrect. We will. Nothing will happen to those contracts. They are immutable. They are not immutable. They can't be changed by Bitocracy. They are. They can only be changed by Bitocracy, so they're immutable, but for Bitocracy, and they can't be shut down. And so they're going to stay, and we will make sure to keep them healthy because there are funds there, there are users there. Part of the reason that I think it's important to have SOV staking is because there are people who are staking in sovereign Bitocracy, and lest we forget, right now, the canonical registry of all SOV tokens is on Rootstock, which makes it an incredibly important chain for SOV. So no, we're not abandoning Rootstock, but we are expanding our horizons.
Travis Trades asks, can we get just a little more info on this airdrop, marketing info for new incomers? I assume it's about the Taproot assets. Oh, or Iago, do you know when we might be able to share more information on this?
End of the month, beginning of February, we expect to have like a testnet.
Okay, let's see. This is from Boudreaux, would open positions, tokens, trades, staking all be migrated over to the new layer? Also, what kind of wallet compatibility would be used? So the first part is no.
No, and the reason no is because Sovereign isn't designed to move users' funds. It's designed to provide users with custody over their own assets. So we can't, it would be very convenient if we could just move everyone's funds, but we can't. So that's not going to happen. In terms of wallets, we're going to be using EVM chains, at least initially. It would be way too much work to refactor and rebuild everything that Sovereign's built for a different virtual machine. So all of the wallets that work now will continue to work for Sovereign wherever it goes in the foreseeable future.
I'm intervening with another YouTube question from Pag S Money P. How much financial runway does SOV team have? For how many years can we continue to fund development?
If we were to, if we continue just like our development budget, the way it's at our current spend on development, we would have approximately 2 years. We have additional expenses. We have operational expenses. We have marketing expenses, some of which could be quite large, like exchange listings. So practically speaking, on the basis of a high spend rate, we would expect right now, like if we were max spending, to have about 15 months of runway without raising any additional funds, without selling any additional SOV. If the market sours, we will do what we've done in the past, and we will modulate our spend down, and we will extend that runway. If the market heats up, we can, as a community, consider potentially extending that runway or even increasing that runway through a fundraising or even selling into the market. So I would say we have comfortably 15 months at a very high spend rate and more if we choose, and the market suggests that we should reduce that rate.
Choo Choo asks, how will SOV interact with Sovereign Layer and BitcoinOS?
think we don't know yet. We have a lot of ideas, but exactly how Bitocracy and SOV will earn revenue from BitcoinOS, there's a lot of different ways. It could be transaction fees, it could be aspects of governance, it could be the bridging. There are all kinds of potential ways. It could be some of them or all of them. That needs to be decided closer to launch date, or actually probably even well after launch date. My view would be that we should learn a lesson from what we've done. We have, with Sovereign, sought to immediately start extracting value from the system and paying SOV stakers, which is not something any startup would do and not something that almost any other crypto project does. And I think it has proven to be bad optics and bad tokenomics. So my view is we should create a lot of value before we start trying to extract it, and then we can guarantee that there's a lot of value to extract. So I think this is just a longer debate.
Capitalist 42 asks, any major exchange want to list SOV? Yeah, we've been approached by a few. We have open conversations. Armando and I are in the process of reviewing the deals and the offers. French, any other questions from the YouTube side?
Yes. Bobby Gorman asks, was thinking of staking some more SOV long term. Would the inability to move existing stakers to the new setup suggest that we should wait until you have the new setup in place? I assume this refers to staking on BitcoinOS.
One of the reasons that I would like to suggest and plan to introduce a SIP to provide stakers with a base fee of SOV revenue is because I don't want that dilemma to be the guiding dilemma for people. I want people who want to stake, who want to participate in governance, to feel comfortable to do so. And so by providing SOV rewards as a base revenue or yield to SOV stakers, we can guarantee that SOV stakers will be able to earn effectively equivalent yield wherever they happen to be staking. So my personal answer to you is, if I would say if my SIP passes, you shouldn't have to worry about it. But my SIP hasn't passed yet, and I haven't even sort of presented it to the community yet. So, not financial advice.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Kranik here has a question about referral links, and I don't think it was answered here on Discord. Kranik is asking, will referral links be activated? This will be a big incentive for users to post about sovereign services they are satisfied with. Kranik, referral links is something that we have tried to tackle time and time again. And the basic fact that Sovereign is a non-KYC service where we don't know our clients and we don't know which action we can attribute to whom, leads to ultimately to gamification of the referral system, and basically draining it out by people with bots. That's what's going on. So I really doubt that, unless someone can come up with a cool solution. And Guillaume Labs asks on YouTube, how would BitcoinOS impact Bitcoin fees? And he asks an additional question now. What is your ambition in terms of transaction fee affordability for BitcoinOS? So I guess it's the same question.
Yeah, I don't have a definitive answer for you yet because we're not entirely sure how expensive it will be to rent or to buy block space in Bitcoin for the rollups. And even if we did, we don't know. There's a lot of variables here. So there's Bitcoin fees. There's how many rollups are rolling up through BitcoinOS, and how many transactions are we aggregating? In other words, how we basically take the cost of transactions and divide it across all of the transactions. And it's also a question of, are we using a pure play Bitcoin model or a hybrid model? Because a hybrid model would likely be cheaper. So obviously we'll never be able to give a definitive answer of how much the transaction fees cost, except for at any given moment. But the bottom line is potentially extremely cheap, potentially so cheap that the users don't pay them, but the apps pay them for the users as part of a trading fee, for example.
Thanks,
Okay, so Kranik asks, will referral links be activated? This will be a big incentive for users to post about sovereign services they are satisfied with.
We covered that just now. I answered him. Did we touch MAL's questions about trying to wrap his head around the different layers, the application layer, computer and execution layer, and explain like M5 to the layers of BitcoinOS? Jago, you want to touch upon that?
On the BitcoinOS page, there's a pretty good explanation, I think. So you can go into the docs, and there's and that will give like a high-level overview. A lot of this terminology is probably going to change, and may even be inconsistent between some of our documentation. But basically, on a very high level, you got Bitcoin Core, which is Bitcoin main chain blocks. That's where the security comes from. You have what I'm going to call a compression, aggregation, and settlement layer, or sometimes we call it the execution layer. So compression, aggregation, and settlement is what I'll call it now. That layer is what ties all of the rollups together, and it is also what embeds the validity proof into Bitcoin. You've got the rollups. The rollups are the execution environments. Basically, each of them is a different virtual machine. So, for example, EVM is a type of virtual machine. So you could have one which is an EVM. And then you have the transactions that are occurring, which basically happen within each EVM, get rolled up by the VM, and sent to the compression, aggregation, and settlement layer. And no, the execution layer is not BitVM. The BitVM sort of system is actually not any one of those. That's because Bitcoin is not like Ethereum. You don't get to be able to bridge tokens by having a rollup bridge. You have to have a separate, so you have a data bridge and a token bridge. What I've just described is the system for data. The system for tokens would be what I referred to as Holy Rail.
Marcy asks, will there be opportunities for developers to contribute to BitcoinOS infrastructure?
Yes, that's exactly what we're looking to do. Once there's enough of a DevNet to offer, the idea is to turn it into a public good and invite as many developers to contribute as possible.
Okay, for dessert, go ahead.
Jago, have you seen interest from non-EVM DeFi ecosystems with maybe collaborating or building on sovereign layer or BitcoinOS? Maybe from Solana, maybe from Cosmos, Polkadot?
No, not really. I think people still haven't cottoned on to what's happening in Bitcoin. And so even though for us it's very obvious what's happening, pretty much no one outside of sort of our little corner of Bitcoin understand that Bitcoin DeFi and in particular Bitcoin layer 2s are becoming more important. Notable exception to this is Starkware, who are definitely looking into it. So yeah, I think it's just too soon. We're very much at the beginning here. People, I think as stuff starts to roll up, it will become, the drum beat will get louder and louder.
Thank you, Iago. MAL asks speculative question. Any speculative thoughts on what sort of rollups can be built or Sovereign would like to build? Any thoughts on the enabled use cases? So basically, what could be done on BitcoinOS?
Yeah, I'm most interested in. I mean, like the first obvious thing is an EVM. The second thing I think would be building a privacy layer, or what I call a data security layer, which institutions and individuals would be able to use to be able to manage their transactions across the entire ecosystem. Basically, it would be a much better version of sort of the phrase suddenly escapes me.
Dark pools?
Yeah, dark pools or mixers is the term I was looking for. So I think those are two obvious things. I think other things which would make sense are potentially like a Rust-based VM or other VMs which would allow developers who are new to the crypto space to develop in native languages. And I think probably the most obvious thing is that we will start to see what I've heard other people start calling rolled apps, which is basically applications which have a very optimized, specific, basically instead of trying to build everything on chains, every single application kind of has its own chain, which is optimized for its own thing. I think we're a ways away from that, but that will, especially for things like gaming, or anything that has like social media or high frequency trading, that's almost certainly going to be the way it's going to be done.
Travis Trades asks, could we open perps again with BitcoinOS?
That's the dream, yes. In fact, we can go even further than that. We could potentially go beyond, for example, an AMM and have an order book. There's lots of, it opens up huge vistas.
I know this was alluded to earlier, but what would our relationship be with our current rootstock dApps? And how much connectivity, if any, would it have to dApps on Sovereign layer?
Almost zero. You don't get interoperability unless you're building on a shared infrastructure. So there would be bridging, almost certainly trusted bridging. There are some ideas around ZK bridging, which would be near trustless, but it's not near production. So it's basically you need to think of them as two separate chains. It's the same as when Aave launched on Polygon and on Ethereum and on BSC or whatever.
Would we have a similar event where we're just redeploying some of Sovereign's products onto this new layer and having like a similar?
Yeah. I mean, we can do whatever we want. We could deploy some of the suite of applications, none of the suite of applications. Everything. I think it will need to be decided on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, so we're a few minutes into or past the hour, so maybe we can wrap up the recorded portion of this unless we have any final questions. I see MAL is typing something, so maybe we can answer this last question and then wrap up the recorded portion and begin the after hours. He asked, what does governance look like on BitcoinOS? That's a good question.
There are three options. So basically I'm saying we don't know, but there are three options. Option number one is you have node-driven governance. basically what Bitcoin has, kind of soft consensus governance, where if the majority of nodes shift to using a new implementation, that becomes, and it's a forked implementation, so it's like not backwards compatible, you basically have a hard fork, or if it is backwards compatible, you have a soft fork, and basically governance is done via forks. So that's option one. Option two, which is what currently most rollups have. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, every single rollup, with the exception of Fuse, currently uses a multisig. So that's basically governance by a bunch of people. Kind of like a board of directors. And then there's option three, which is tokenized governance, which is what we have. And then we have to choose what the tokenized governance looks like. Do we continue with a replica of Bitocracy as it is now? Do we make changes? So those are the options, and we will. I think it's premature to decide right now exactly how that governance will work, because it depends a lot on the specifics of how the provers work, how the sequences work. Do we have shared sequencers? How are the shared sequences governed? Is there a separate DA layer? How is the DA layer sort of validated? And a lot of, to be clear, we don't have final answers on any of those questions.
All right, we have I think a couple more questions coming. But maybe still might be a good time to close out the recording session. So I just want to thank everyone for packing the house, for their enthusiasm. Shout outs to everyone for their awesome questions, and thank you for staying with us for this long. You guys are OGs. I want you all to keep kicking ass. Scan the SOV Squad QR if you haven't already. Join our group. Get the info there first. Help us share our message and our mission with not just the Bitcoin ecosystem, but the Web3 ecosystem as a whole. So thanks a lot, everyone. We'll keep answering questions. We'll keep chatting with you. So stick around if you're in for that. But we're going to close out the recorded portion of Community Call episode 60. So thank you all. Stay sovereign.
Stay sovereign.
Okay, so this is from Unicum. Is the team thinking about a way for SOV to be moved from rootstock to BitcoinOS with the consensus of the holder? Yago mentioned bridges.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Is the team thinking about a way for SOV to be moved from rootstock to BitcoinOS?
Yes, we've been thinking about this a lot, and the answer is we don't have a good one. Oh wait, sorry. Let me rephrase, because I actually was thinking about something else. So as we go multi